So I'm now on to another step of my G3 project. I'm doing door panels for it. I have a door panel here out of my AFS Gypsy, and so luckily I have a pattern. And looking at it, it's made out of hardboard, which is what they used in the 60s and the 70s. That's typical, but when you look at the surface of it, it's almost like they just took and pressed this pattern into the wood and then painted it, because it's such a thin layer, and I guess it could be a really thin layer of vinyl that's been pressed into the hardboard. I'm not sure. So what I'm doing is I used it as a pattern, and I bought a sheet of hardboard, 1/8 hardboard, just from the local building supply. And I deleted the pocket in the door. I have this pocket in the door. I guess it's so you can put stuff in there, but I've never really found it that handy because it's so narrow and things can get lost in the back, so I don't really like that option. This makes it looks cleaner too. And it worked really well. I've never actually made a door panel before. And I was told to use contact cement, which is what I use. And I'm amazed at just how well it stuck. I didn't think the vinyl would stick to the back, this rough surface, as well as it did. It really stuck well. I thought I was going to have to fold it over and then glue it down with something else, some other kind of epoxy or something. So now it'll easily stay in place once I put all the screws in. If you didn't have a door panel to use as a pattern, it'd be pretty easy to make a pattern out of paper, and then mark all the holes where you want them. Pretty simple door panel to make. There's a slight curve in the door right here, but as you can see, they just screwed it down and it formed itself. This notch won't be in mine, as you can see, because I don't have that brace coming down off the door upper. My door uppers bolt across the top. I've put holes in here that I'll cut out later. You can just see the indentations there. And to cut this, it's surprisingly easy to cut. What I did when I just laid that one on top, and then I scored around with a razor knife, and I cut into here, so I've got a really nice defined edge that's exactly the same as the original one. I've just highlighted it in white so you can see it better. You can use a saw to cut this, of course, if you have a jigsaw, but my big tin snips work great for cutting this stuff. And you would think that it would crush it a bit, but it actually cuts really nice. It doesn't fray the edge or anything. It comes out nice and clean. If you've got a big set of tin snips, and even small ones for doing around here, tin snips work great. Yeah, as I was saying, it cuts really easy. Just as long as you don't let it go right to the tip, because then it'll crush it. It'll crack. If you do that, it breaks off to the side. Yeah, nice clean edge. So for the corners, I just use a step drill. You can see it frays pretty good, so I stay away from the edge. You can see it makes a bit of a mess out of it for sure. And I just use a coarse file on it after to tidy them up. I think a nice fine jigsaw would have worked good for this hole here. I do own a jigsaw, but I don't have much for blades for it. So that hole's kind of rough, but I cut on the waist side of the line so I can dress it with my file. So I've sanded the edges of the hardboard, and I sanded the surface of the hardboard too. The guy at the building store said it would be best to take the shine off of the smooth side, just to help it bond. And then my method of gluing the vinyl on is to pin it down to the table and then lay the hardboard on top of it, because I was thinking about it, wondering how I was going to get this piece of vinyl onto the hardboard without getting any wrinkles or bubbles in it. So the way I did it on the first one was to pin it down and put just a little bit of tension on it. And you'll see once I start putting the contact cement on, it's going to slacken off just a tiny bit again, because I guess it softens the vinyl a little. These cheap dollar store paintbrushes work really well. They don't dissolve in contact cement. And I've used about almost half a can to do this job so far. So one can is going to do 2 door panels, and that's a quart or a liter. In Canada, just under a liter. And then brush it on, but not too thick, because if you get it too wet, it will go right through and start softening your vinyl on the outside, so don't get it too wet. Instructions say you can put on 2 coats for porous surfaces, but I did just 1, and it stuck really good. And I did a test of it too to see how well it sticks, and I did just put 1 coat on there as well. And I peeled the vinyl off, and when I peeled the vinyl off, it actually took the wood with it, so it's got a good bond on there. I better open the window. Stuff gets pretty ripe. And I'm just sort of pushing it in to get it into the pores of the fabric on the back. My house is pretty warm. I've got a wood stove downstairs, so this stuff dries really fast. So by the time you've brushed it on, I think it says up to 20 minutes you can let this set before you stick the 2 pieces together. But for me, by the time I brush this on here and then brush the hardboard, it'll be time to stick it on. We've been having really nice weather here on Vancouver Island. It's been the sunniest, warmest January. I can't remember a January where we had so much sunshine. But I'm still doing stuff inside because it's a little too cold out there. One thing for standing around out there, I get cold, and things like paint and contact cement don't want to cure very well in the cold, because it is about, I'm trying to think what it is in Fahrenheit. It's about plus 5 degrees Celsius right now, so I can't remember what that is in Fahrenheit. Yeah, so that'll do her there. Just going to tighten it back up a tiny bit. Yeah, then I'll just brush some on this side. Got my contact cement on both sides now, on the hardboard and the vinyl. And as you can see, I marked it. And I put a couple of pins here just to use as a guide, so I can tuck it in there and then drop it down without moving it. See, I smeared that side pretty good too. Try not to drop it. Yeah, and then I just line it up with the edges. I have lots of room for error here because I made it really big. You can see I missed it there, but lots of glue down, so that's fine. Then I just take something smooth like this hammer here. And I use this ruler, which is it's 1.25 inches wide. You'll notice I'm half metric and half standard. I think temperature I talk Celsius, speed I talk kilometers per hour, and I still measure stuff in imperial because I don't think anybody really switched in Canada. We switched over to metric in, I think it was in the 80s, and most everybody's still using inches and feet and yards, but we measure distance in kilometers. It's kind of funny. So it's plus 5 Celsius, but this is 1.25 inches wide, which is just the right, what I'm getting to, it's just the right width for folding it over. I've tried using metric to make things, and that's the only time I make mistakes is when I start using millimeters and centimeters. I don't know why. So anyway, that ruler works great as a guide. See just the right amount of overlap. So I've cut all the corners so it'll fold over nice. And now I'm going to do the same as the other side. I'll brush the vinyl and I'll brush an inch or so inside here. And believe it or not, this surface is rough, but it'll stick to that really, really well. Don't do this on the kitchen table either. Yeah, so now I just take the edges and I pull them over, pull them up tight. You want it on that edge the most because you really want a good bond on there, good and tight. And it just sticks down like magic. And I kind of put some tension on it, pull it tight. yeah, so that's about that. And there you go, that's the door panel. There. So yeah, I'll let that set overnight, and tomorrow I'll put them on. Here's a look at the door panel installed. Pretty straightforward. Thank you for watching my door panel video.